different modes of what you call transportation and mobility services, vehicle as a service, ride sharing, mobility, micro-mobility, etc. under a single platform, working with automotive clients and rental companies and lease cos across the world. I've got a fantastic panel here today, and I'll probably let them introduce themselves, and then we'll proceed to kind of hopefully a very insightful conversations. So if you don't mind.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well done for turning up. We thought this would be the graveyard shift, and almost, but not quite. So Oz Choudri, I'm head of mobility solutions for enterprise mobility. And so we have a very diverse portfolio of services ranging from everything from car sharing, car club, to vehicle hire, to commercial vehicles. We operate in over 90 countries, been going for 65 years, and really interested in today's panel discussion to talk about how shared mobility is really sort of changing some of those engagement and innovative solutions that we provide for our customers. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm George. So I agree, there's more people here than I thought, which is great. So I'm responsible for fleet operations for new Jaguar, future Jaguar. I can't say too much about what we do, but we're changing a lot of what Jaguar stands for and what it is, and my team are responsible for implementing different capabilities across UK, Europe and rest of the world. So thanks for having us.
Hi, my name is Espen. I work at Kolombus, a PTA on the west coast of Norway. Pleasure to be here. And we work with buses and boats and trains, of course. And then we have some city e-bikes, a car sharing concept, and we also have a business or corporate mobility team as well. Half of them are present in the theater now. Or half of the theater is our team. So I guess we're going to talk more about kind of shared mobility, which is kind of what we kind of do on top of the more like traditional mobility. Thank you.
Thank you all. So, I mean, we are going to throw in a lot of new terminologies, but just to kind of help everyone come to the same page. Shared mobility has different, it's a new, I guess, terminology which is kind of coming up and becoming more and more popular across the world. It basically means bringing together different ways of asset sharing and putting together different ways of moving people around. And I've got some stats here, just from different researchers. For example, about 40 million e-hailing trips are made through two of the largest booking platforms across the world daily. 40 million. And that replaces a lot of private vehicles. Also, there was a McKinsey report or survey which was done in 2020 where they said 60% of people would be quite willing to share those journeys and if it reduces travel time. And then finally, one last stat, which is a shared vehicle can remove 11 private vehicles and 13 metric tons of CO2 annually. So where I'm heading towards really is that shared mobility is going to be the future, because that's how we can reduce our carbon footprint effectively and reduce the number of overall vehicles and utilize them better. So that's kind of the context of what we are going to talk about today and really find out what everyone is doing. So Oz, if I may start with you and kind of ask about what are you involved with, what are the kind of innovative programs you're working in shared mobility in both B2B and B2C space, and any particular kind of interesting projects and challenges you're facing.
Sure, thank you. So the one that I'd like to highlight has been the one that has been very innovative, very exciting, but really challenging, which is probably a good one to talk about. So about 2 years ago, we actually worked in the Highlands and Islands in Scotland. So if any of you know the area, it's really rural. There's not a lot going on. It's the size of Belgium, but very rural. They worked with Enterprise actually, because we were already operating our car sharing services in the Highlands. They worked with us to apply for some funding from the Scottish Government and help deploy a mobility as a service platform. And the idea was that the platform was going to integrate public transport shared mobility, and actually provide this service to the residents, the local businesses, and the tourists. So we were quite keen to be part of it because we were already operating in what is, as I say, a very rural area, but then has some very concentrated activity in terms of the way people commute and sort of transport. Majority of the people drive a car because it's rural. And unfortunately, if you look at the profile of those vehicles, they were dirty old diesel vehicles, right? That's just unfortunately how it is. So we worked together, we integrated our services. I have to say, it was really challenging because when you're working on something like a mass project, it requires a lot of operators to collaborate. And what I noticed is that to start off with, it was quite difficult because we all had different visions and objectives. It took a while for us to kind of have an epiphany that actually what we were trying to do was deliver something for the residents, and how we simplified our own sort of services and the way our brands and our sort of commercial offering was really important if we wanted this project to be successful. So I really enjoyed it because it tested us, particularly when you think of enterprise mobility. We have a strong brand, we have a strong consumer, but you've got to learn to be able to innovate and adapt to what is maybe working with other operators and working in a rural area and trying to fit into an overall vision. And the vision was, let's get the residents, the businesses, and the tourists to use this mass platform as an alternative to maybe using personal vehicles. The other thing that was really exciting about that project is it was also had governance built into it. So we actually had the University of Leeds working with us to collate the data, to help us engage with the local residents and sort of build a whole sort of framework for the data and the sort of governance to understand what we were doing. Was it best practice? If we made mistakes, were we aware of them and could we learn from them? And so again, when you're a commercial operator like Enterprise, the need for data and intelligent data becomes very, very important. So again, that was a really interesting project for us. And what it showed us, what I learned from that project, and it's still live, by the way, you can download it on your app store if you care to, it's called Go High as a mass platform. What I learned from that our shared mobility offering, particularly the car club and the vehicleized services, was really important in generating traction, particularly in the B2B space. And actually, guess what? Those B2B users, when they're not working, are retail users as well. So actually, we found a commercial model that allowed us to go beyond the funding that we had for the initial 2 years, because we were starting to generate revenue through the shared mobility program. And actually, the Mass app then became just a tool for intuitive booking. So I think a really exciting project. It's still live. We're still learning from it. Got a few scars from it, but also made some really good friends with other collaborations and operators. So I hope that's useful.
Thank you, Oz. I live in Edinburgh, so I'm going to try that out next time. Just on kind of similar lines, maybe coming to you, Espen, just very quickly. I know you're kind of working on a similar kind of capability in shared mobility in Norway. How do you reflect on kind of what Oz just said, and maybe share some of your insights around, what areas to really consider when you're deploying shared mobility in communities and remote areas, if that's been your experience?
Yeah, almost all of Norway is kind of remote compared to you guys, right? So we work on the kind of very rural areas compared to the rest of Europe. But I just want to kind of go back on to 2017. Then the politician made a decision that Columbus, we were to be more than a public transport authority, like a public mobility authority. So since 2017, we have both the possibilities and also kind of we need to work with new services. That's why we have been working with establishing a city e-bike system. We used to have a collaboration with a Danish company called GoBike. They went bankrupt in 2018. So then we scouted the world's market for a city e-bike system that could work on a Nordic, in the Nordic region. We didn't find any, so we built our own. It's probably the best city e-bike system in the world, maybe. Why? Well, it's electrical, so it's fully electric. That's the beauty. The bike itself have a high quality standard, and maybe the most important thing is that it's fully integrated in the public transport ticket. So if you have valid public transport ticket, you can also bike for 50 minutes every time you use it. And we also, since we are not a commercial entity, or we are following the targets for the politicians in our region, we can also plan where we're going to place the different, for instance, the city e-bikes. Not only in the city center, but we can also place it in the rural areas where was the one bus an hour, so we can offer a little bit more of the kind of urban flavor to the rural areas with the city e-bike system. And we also, on another level, we also are kind of trying to scale our car sharing service. That's on a low scale for the moment, but we're trying to figure out how we're gonna work with that. And the third thing is that some of my colleagues are working in the corporate team, and they're working closely together with a lot of companies around in the area, also now in the more rural areas. So we can talk to them, plan together with them, advocate the kind of how we can plan mobility solutions together with the different companies, and that's a really good value for us.
Thank you. Maybe a question to George next is from an OEM perspective, automotive company perspective. What's your thoughts on kind of how a company like JLR are kind of thinking about shared mobility, and also how do you see sort of the technology play a crucial role in enabling that kind of set of services, I guess, because it's very different from the traditional world of OEMs. So any insights or perspective you can share from your side?
I thought we said my question was who's going to win tonight. This is way too serious. No, I'll try and be serious. In terms of mobility, so JLR obviously have two separate entities that are fully invested in that side. But I think from my point of view, the innovation that you see out there in this room, the capabilities that these partners have, and definitely use the word partners because I think too often OEMs and maybe other companies look at the innovators and the people out there as just suppliers, and they're just providing a service and that's all it is. And I think unless you build a partnership, you're never going to get the investment and the time and the relationship and the best out of what the capabilities are. I think that is our goal moving forward, is that we are finding the right partners to be able to elevate our services across the world, essentially, to elevate the client experience. And so that's ultimately what it's all about, is that no matter how good your technology is, if you're at the end of it, if your client experience isn't good, no one's going to come back. And so it needs to be efficient, it needs to be sustainable, it needs to be cost effective, it needs to be all of these things, but ultimately it needs to drive and deliver a client experience like no other, and that is ultimately our goal, right? And so that's why we need to find the right partners. There's so many ways, so many wonderful pieces of technology out there that fit in different lanes, and it's finding the right ones that fit in your lane to be able to elevate your brand or your product or whatever you're trying to do. I think mobility is an absolute minefield for the consumer today, in today's world. I think if we're able to make it more simple through technology and through innovation and through collaborations with different partners, that is going to drive your business forward, our brand sales forward, and ultimately give everyone what they want, is at the end of the day mobility, whether it's for 1 hour, whether it's for a month, whether it's for a subscription, whether it's for a lease, whatever that mobility looks like, there is a package out there for someone, and there's a right partner out there for someone, and we just need to make sure we collaborate together. And I think that's, in my opinion, that's what it's about.
Thank you. Talking about collaboration, I guess, maybe a question to Oz. So how does enterprise collaborate with their partners in delivering shared mobility?
So we love to collaborate, get to share the risk, right, and the rewards. A great example of us collaborating, quite a few years ago, coming up to 4 years ago, a good colleague of mine, who's actually sat in the audience, founded something called the Urban Mobility Partnership. And it's made up of a number of operators and tech companies. So right now I think Trainline on there, Brompton Bikes, Enterprise, Stagecoach. But it was founded actually by Enterprise and Stagecoach. And the reason it was created is because what we could see is that in our industry, a lot of the local government and the policy makers needed to see that we as an industry could collaborate. And actually, the Urban Mobility Partnership was created with the view of coming together to advise our industry on best practices. It's had a number of white papers that it's released, and we've done a number of roundtable discussions with local government, councillors, politicians, because the perception is that, you know, as various tech companies, operators, we find it hard to collaborate, and sometimes we are creating our own barriers. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. What we're probably trying to say is that we've all existed in our market space. Of course, we all want to grow our market space, but actually through collaboration, maybe we'll find revenue and avenues for new market growth. But what may be stopping us historically is maybe out-of-date policy or the ability to expand our services. So the Urban Mobility Partnership, it's live, it has a website. If you get a chance, please go check it out, because I think it does a really good job of not having any one operator or tech company be the single voice there, but it's an industry voice, really trying to get best practices and engage some of those decision makers, those policy decision makers in that conversation. So I think that for us has been a huge success. The other thing it's allowed us to do then is work with all these different operators on different projects. And actually, of all the projects that I've worked on, some of the challenges we've all faced is the fact that, particularly when you're looking at some of the innovative projects that we've done, marketing them is really difficult. It's our Achilles heels. You know, people find it difficult to collaborate when it comes to marketing, particularly if you're having to simplify what is a multimodal offering with shared mobility and make it really simple for the consumer to understand why they should suddenly use bike hire, car club, public transport. So I think marketing collaboration allows you to understand each other's culture, each other's brand and USP, and then maybe simplify that in a way that marketing allows the consumer to actually buy into it. So I think collaboration is really, really important. I think the point that you're talking about partnerships is just really important. And the final bit I would like to say is that to really advocate and develop partnerships, I think we need to see a lot more of that from local and central government advocating it and making it easy to collaborate. Because a lot of times what I see in the UK is, say, transport bodies, local councils, they are maybe the gatekeeper. They already own the relationship through some of the commercial agreements they may have with buses, with car clubs, with bike hire. And so they can actually help instigate that collaboration, bring people together, have a vision, and guess what? Someone might follow you. So I think it's really important, but we need to do more of it.
Yeah, I just want to add on that, because I think that's what we are trying to do. Since we are we are public transport companies, so we can be kind of the coordinator, collaborating with both the private industry and commercial companies. And we do that with car sharing, for instance. We do collaborate with different operators. We would like them to make money. Maybe we can kind of give them like a little nudging in the start to kind of get the service up and running, and we do that with kind of all the services we are doing, and we collaborate on marketing. We are trying to kind of share for the different services in general, not the specific company. We can't do that maybe, but we can share for car sharing or other services as well, scooters for instance as well. So that's one of the roles I think we have in general. We are a kind of coordinating kind of body in the mix of that. Anything you want to add?
Okay, no, so that's really interesting, and just kind of building up on that in terms of collaboration. I guess I'm very interested to understand how you see shared mobility and kind of this sharing of asset contributing to sort of sustainability goals. I mean, whoever wants to pick up that question, but I think fundamentally, I think, I mean, I'm just talking about one example Coastr is working with. So we are working in Japan with one of the OEMs there, large OEMs, about how we can support them to launch a community-based service which really kind of helps them with their kind of underserved population, but at the same time they want to use green vehicles to reduce the carbon footprint and of course help customers, their customers move away from private vehicles. So that kind of sustainability agenda seems almost like very well connected into shared mobility. So how do you kind of see that coming through as a future strategy?
From an OEM point of view, I think maybe less mobility-led, even though obviously it's a mobility conversation, but it's around circularity of those assets. So typically today's world, we have one life cycle of a car, then it becomes a used car, then it becomes a used car for a long time and then gets scrapped, right? So how could we have multiple uses of that vehicle and ultimately end up with a full circularity of it? That's something we're definitely exploring and trying to understand that. That might be a demonstration, becomes courtesy cars, becomes lease, becomes subscription, becomes long, third, fourth, fifth lease kind of things. From a mobility point of view, obviously it's about efficiency. So the technology is driving the efficiency of the asset, which means you need less assets in the network, but everyone still has access to the mobility. And so that is where I think the technology should drive that, to understand the fluctuations in peaks and troughs and demand, and being able to move assets potentially, obviously, in different locations to manage those peaks and troughs. And that's where I think mobility and innovation needs to drive the sustainability piece. And it needs not turning a diesel car into an electric car doesn't instantly make it sustainable, right? You need to use that now sustainable vehicle, carbon neutral vehicle, to become even more sustainable, because there is impact on building that car. So how do you make sure that car is constantly in use, used to the fullest, but obviously you don't need as many potentially as you would have today in a mobility sector. So for me, it's about sweating the assets as much as possible, because ultimately for everyone that's good, because it means you've still got availability of cars. The people funding those vehicles are funding less cars, which means technically you should be able to offer the price lower to the consumer, enabling everyone to have mobility at a more affordable rate. And so that's my opinion.
I really like that feedback. I mean, we often say to fleet managers, let the assets sweat so that you don't have to, right? But I have got an example in the UK. We just released a case study, and I'll keep it brief. It's a customer who historically we've been providing car hire services to them, but they're in quite remote sites, 3 military sites in the UK. What we've been able to do is, over a period of the last 7 years, is increase the amount of on-site car share for them. And what that actually has done is it's really helped us reduce the amount of trips, incidental trips that we were doing when we were historically just providing a car to them, because you'd have to have 2 cars and then another car comes back, and then on the collection the same. So we've just grown the fleet from, say, 7 on-site vehicles to now where they have 100 on-site vehicles, and all their staff travel takes place through these vehicles. And it's been phenomenal. And actually, for the last 12 months, we've been, really tracking the data, and we've saved them over 100 tons of CO2 reduction and reduced their business mile by 372,000 miles, and saved them a bucket load of cash. And also, by the way, as an operator, saved myself a lot of money, because I'm really efficient and optimizing the number of journeys and resource it takes me to deliver this service. And I think that's really important, is that for me, I understood the objective of how the customer wanted to embrace shared mobility, and actually it was to reduce their CO2 footprint in a local area. Because historically, when they were just driving a lot of cars, it had a lot of impact on the local community. It was causing issues to the local infrastructure and also, to the air quality. And now, because I understood that they wanted to be a better corporate citizen, so to speak, in their local community, they embraced the shared mobility. The bit that was really hard, and this is where we all need to work better at, is getting them to change their policy. Because changing policy just seems to be really difficult, because policy drives behavior, and behavior is what's delivered the savings, not necessarily the fact that there's a car share on site, accessible 24/7 and really easy to book through an app. That's not what's delivered it. It's the policy that's changed behavior. I've just been able to give them a system or a service that to the end user is seamless, or an enhancement to what they have. So I think we've got to be really careful about kind of when we're talking about shared mobility, who we're delivering it to and the stakeholders that actually ultimately will make it a success. So yeah, but great, I really like your feedback.
Yeah, and the keyword was sustainability, right? Back to kind of where we started, where Norway and our region as well is not that dense as it is in London. We have like routes or lines where there could be like 1.2 passenger on average a day. That means a lot of them are just driving with no passengers, and peak hours, of course, more than that. So I believe that, I think we need to focus more on the on-demand services, the DRT services. And if we combine that with autonomy, we also have, apparently we still have the world's most advanced autonomous bus driving in the city center of Stavanger right now. That's a pilot we have been working with since May 2022. Still up and running, drives 99% autonomous in the city center. And if we combine DRT, on-demand services, with autonomy, boom, I think you have a beautiful offer in the future, which also could be, of course, a shared mobility service.
Thank you. I mean, that's a really interesting point, autonomous vehicles, because I guess I see basically working with a lot of our kind of partners as well. There's a growing interest in finding different use cases of autonomous vehicles, and I think there are some interesting projects also we are kind of talking about in the commercial rental space. Coming back to your example, you just described the kind of MOD client, very remote, kind of using more self-service. How do you see sort of autonomous vehicles play in the shared mobility role and enabling that in future? And I'll come back to George as well.
Honestly, I have no idea. What I'm seeing next from what is a traditional car sharing model, so where the telematics are being fitted into the vehicle, those telematics are enabling access, but also giving us good telemetry data to understand, the optimization is probably the connected car. That's what I'm seeing from the OEM, and that's where I think the next stage is for us. That suddenly, and I think you made the point, George. I loved it. Today it could be rented as a car club, but then tomorrow it could be a long-term hire. It could be used for a courtesy car, following that. So the persona changes, but as does the car and the usage of it as well. So I think the connected vehicle is going to give us a lot more access to data to be really efficient and optimize the placement of those assets, and then also the access to those assets as well. Autonomous right now, I'm not quite sure. I can see how that will. I love your boom, right? I get where you go with that. I can see that, but for me, I think it's a staged sort of evolution of the way the car is used by the consumer. Because what we've got to be careful in all of this is that it's the consumer that we've got to put right in the center of the product here. Is it consumer centric? Will they be able to adopt it? Does it make sense to them? Can they afford it? Which is, I think, the point you were making about how the car will evolve. I think autonomous is probably right on that scale of the pendulum, but it's going from ownership to usership, right? That's what that swing is, and I think that's what I'm most excited about. So I hope that answers your question. I'm slightly skipping it, I know, but.
George, any views from a automotive
I definitely agree. I think autonomous vehicles are running before we can walk, I think. Like, there's so many more things that we can do before we start to not have anyone in a car. for me, let alone obviously the insurance challenges and all these liability issues and things that will just scare the hell out of everyone, even like to get in them, to own them, to rent them out, to have a company that is backing them and all that kind of stuff. There's challenges there, but I think there's so many more connected car stuff, as you mentioned, that we can do. There's so many more flexibility things that we can look at. We should be using the assets more rather than already moving on to the next one. We feel like we're trying to be the next iPhone, and it's like, it's just a disposable thing. This isn't a disposable thing, this is built to last, right? So why are we all of a sudden now changing to another thing? And it's like, let's use the assets that we've got already, get better technology, be more safe with that in the future, and then maybe that's something to come. But it does obviously drive potentially lower costs because there's no driver, so that technically should mean you're getting your service cheaper. It depends on how much those assets are, how much they are to insure, all of these things. But for me, yeah, we're running before we can walk, and there's a lot more fun stuff that we could be doing.
Thank you very much. I think we've finished our time, and we'll probably finish on that note. And thank you again for a wonderful session today. Great, enjoy the conversation. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Well, nobody answered the question about who's going to win tonight. Thanks to the panel. Thanks everybody. It's a wrap.